Hey guys, welcome back. This is episode 7 of What Are You Drinking? We've come back from a bit of a slight hiatus. We got a bit distracted with a couple of expansions that came out, which we'll get into actually, because our topic today is expansions versus DLC, and why it seems like expansions have kind of died down but are coming back in a small way with certain genres, and DLC and how shit it is sometimes, how can it be done well, how it's kind of replaced expansions because of the internet, and I'm assuming that we're going to get a bit heated, but we'll see what happens.
Before I get started, moderator, it's unbiased.
Before I get started, I'm going to ask you guys, what are you drinking?
I'd like to go first because I think it's relevant. I just popped the top on Elysian Brewing Company's Dragon's Tooth Stout. I think that's relevant because I think a lot of us are playing Heart of Thorns right now, and the dragon is very important.
Nice. Does it taste toothy?
The dragon is real.
Yes. There's no actual space. It might be Dragon's Tooth, but I think it's Dragon's
The T might be silent.
There's no apostrophe or anything here. Like, it literally could be anything. I honestly don't know.
Or they just don't know how to speak the English language.
100%. It's good, though.
Right on. Just drinking JD.
Classic.
Straight?
You're a classic
Yeah.
man.
Whatever cola product wants to sponsor us this week.
he's actually still waiting for the cola sponsor. He's just
I'm
drinking
waiting.
straight JD.
It'll happen. Or maybe.
I'm drinking Mad Tom IPA, Muskoka Brewery.
Oh,
Nice.
Not double mad, though?
Nah, just regular today.
Thanks.
I realized that what you guys said was true about me being a hipster
yeah.
beer jerk face.
He admits it. That's the first step
Because
to hipsterism.
at work
It's okay.
today, man, or at work 2 days ago, I have a Belgian friend I'm working with, and he's over here for a couple of months. But he was talking about how he hates Stella because it's shit. And my other buddy was like, "No, man, come on, Stella's all right." And I was like, "He's like, Mike, what do you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's all right for a macro." And then I was like, "Oh my god." I used that word, and now he's been ripping on me for like ever since, day in, day out.
I love your
Yeah.
commitment to the craft. I think the last step left for you is to start crafting. I don't know why you haven't done
I
it.
know.
Oh.
Just for the record, Nuge, you missed an opportunity there. When you said he's committed to the craft. He's committed to the craft beer, I think is the...
I am also
Should've been
crafting right
said
now.
there.
I missed, and he's also. Well done.
Couple uses there. Yeah.
I'm being a bit boring. I don't have any booze in the house, and we're leaving to Toronto tomorrow. So I'm drinking my milk, which expires on the weekend. So chugging away.
The hell?
Just some plain. Feels like
Milk
I'm-
was a bad
Feels
choice.
like I'm 8 years old again, man. Gotta get those bones strong.
Damn it.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Phrasing.
Wow.
What about you,
Yeah,
Henry?
I'm just drinking water because I am getting over my second cold in like a week and a half. So
Wow, this is a rough one.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
you this weekend, screw it. Sorry.
Mike, just disappointed.
yeah,
In life or in
Yeah.
just in general?
Just in you and Mark. Just the two of you.
I apologize. I do apologize. Anyways, let's dive right in, guys. I was thinking about expansions before this podcast started, and I really could only name a few that have come out in the last year or so. I'm thinking mainly MMORPGs: Final Fantasy, Star Wars: The Old Republic, Guild Wars: Heart of Thorns. I guess the exception would be Diablo and StarCraft, which are both Blizzard games, but seems
World
to be.
of Warcraft.
Yeah, another MMO, and I just thought another one, the Taken King, which is kind of being touted as the first major expansion, whereas the other two were DLCs. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Why do you guys think expansions kind of died out, kind of earlier, the last generation?
Anyone want to take this first? Is this...
I don't know.
You, buddy.
I feel like expansions sort of died out when people, like developers and such, or I don't know exactly how the relationship works, started realizing they could more nickel and dime people stuff. Like, yeah, I can charge $60 for a huge expansion, whatever. Or I can charge $15 for this small little part. People are more... When you say, okay, well, I'm going to charge you $60, but I'm going to give you all this. and it's this 8 different things, people are going to expect so much more. So you say, okay, I'm going to charge you $5, and you just get this one little part. I think it's more of the sum of the holes is what phrasing. It's the sum of the holes is more of what they're going for. So then overall, they'll make more money by doing the DLC.
Yeah. So are you saying the sum of all the tiny DLCs will add up to more than what an expansion with some substantial content would have?
Yeah.
Interesting. I'd like to see some numbers. I'd love to see whether that actually makes sense.
That is interesting.
Right? Like I would guess that it's substantially less work for DLC than it is an expansion because they have to sell the expansion to you as like brand new content, new areas, new levels, new skills, new characters, whatever. Whereas a DLC kind of became laughed at early on, right? The horse armor in Oblivion was the biggest example where people were like, what the hell is this shit? Like, I can't believe you're charging us. And now, like, people fucking love horse armor. Like, it makes no sense. Like, I don't know. I just feel like the gamers are a part of it,
I think you gotta sell your DLC too, though. Like, that's not a complete... This is not immune to it.
Right.
But maybe if you're piecemealing it, it costs less, right?
Yeah.
There's less investment, so you don't fracture your player base as much as an expansion might.
Very good point.
Yeah, because when you bring that barrier of entry up, you're going to polarize people more.
Very good point. I mean, obviously the one topic that that we should discuss first off is the fact that games in the past didn't have the capability of patching and updating and adding new content via the internet, right? Whereas the 7th generation, the PS3, I guess it started with the PS2 and the Xbox, but they kind of introduced online gaming and the idea of, downloading maps. But after a while, they started saying screw that to segregation and started charging for it. I remember early Halo maps were always free, and because they didn't want to split the crowd. But now it's built into a season pass or like the long-term plan of DLCs.
Season pass.
Oh, that's a whole other topic I can get into, but we won't touch on that now. But thinking about like expansions back in the day, right? Like, I think it's just a matter of like for Blizzard, for example, they just like it's a tried and true for them. They work their ass off on these expansions and they're substantial work, but damn, are they good quality? Like I don't play much of StarCraft, but I do hear that like each expansion is highly people are highly excited for it. Diablo, StarCraft, what do you want to say, right? They do good jobs. They do a really good job at expansions.
Yeah, I think they got a good rep.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Glenn, is that trust, right? You got to build the trust with your fan base because if you start nickel and diming them for shitty DLC, then I don't think they're going to respect you. I read an article on Reddit Games today talking about Payday 2.
Payday was such a controversy earlier.
Mm-hmm. So apparently they've lost the faith of their fans because like they changed the game from like a unlock scheme, like pay $20 and just unlock everything in game, to a microtransaction game, and now it's
to
just
a drastic degree too.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
But the other thing was that they went back on several promises of saying that it wouldn't be like that, and they made it exactly like that.
Yeah, I think the most frustrating thing, and this is a bit of a tangent, but the most frustrating thing is seeing full-fledged games with microtransactions in them. Like, you can't ask me to pay money and then pay more money to play your game to its full content. That drives me nuts. Full intent, sorry.
Right.
Like I'm not paying $60 and then paying more. I'm not paying $20 for Payday and then paying $3.99 to get a drill or a key to unlock my save. Like TF2 and Dota and LoL do it well because it's a free game.
It's cosmetic,
yeah,
though, too.
And it's cosmetic.
A large portion of this.
I was going to make that comment about Guild Wars, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go to Guild Wars because that's a really interesting topic. Because I want to talk about Guild Wars 1 versus Guild Wars 2. Right? Guild Wars 1. I think unfairly gets a lot of credit for saying, oh, well, the expansion was so much better in Guild Wars 1 because unlike Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns, which only adds one area and one class and just some skills and whatever.
It adds 4 areas though.
Right. So okay, well, the laundry list, it says the Guild Wars 1. The arguers say, oh, but that added 2 classes. It added a whole new world, not just areas. And like, how is that allowed? But I think what people forget is that ArenaNet has supported the hell out of Guild Wars 2 with free content for the last 2-3
Yeah.
years, right?
That's a good point.
That's a bit unfair, I think.
Mhm.
But Guild Wars 1 expansions, like, what were your thoughts at the time? Did you think it was nickel and diming back then? Because that was during the DLC era, wasn't it?
Was it maybe like the birth of DLC? I don't know. What's our timeline on DLC that we've established?
I would guess like 04 onwards. 04,
Okay, then it
05.
definitely was. I've got a biased opinion, but I would say Guild Wars 1 expansions were well worth every penny.
Why? Why do you say that?
There was so much content in them. Like each one was $50 to $60, and
Actually, they were cheaper than
But-
that. Yeah.
they might have been. But if I do the math on my Guild Wars 1 time, I think it's like fractions of a cent per dollar spent. So on an hour's to dollar spent. Maybe I shouldn't tell people that. That's not good. But I played it a lot, so if I've ever gotten value of anything in my life, it would be that.
Right.
So
Fair
yeah, the expansions, I played them all. I played them all very, very thoroughly. I wouldn't have gotten what I got out of that game without having all of them.
Yeah. And you know what? I would argue that that Guild Wars 2, Arena did a fantastic job supporting that game for 2.5 years. Like, until they announced the expansion, you had no reason to be upset. Like, sure, because their model was fantastic. It's like, if you don't want to play, stop playing. It'll still be here when you decide to play again. And they tried to
Right.
entice people to play through tons of things like Living Stories, Super Adventure Box, Halloween events, Christmas events, that kind of thing. That's the right thing to do. I mean, and then also,
Right.
actually, I actually don't know this. Heyman, maybe you'll know. Is how do they handle like significant changes to skills and nerfing and patch updates? That was just like all patching, right? That wasn't like, were there major updates? Was there a big skill change with Heart of Thorns?
So yeah, there was a huge skill change with Heart of Thorns, but most of the time, what they did was they would do, 2 major skill changes through the year. So like 2 giant feature packs, basically, where they added in features, changed stuff as necessary, and well, their idea was to lay the groundwork. And some things worked, some things just crash and burn, like that Atlas thing that they were trying that just failed so hard. So
And well, there was like major, and that was just rolled
Wait,
out
what's
for
the
free,
Atlas
right?
thing?
So what they did was for the Living Season or Living Story Season like 2 or whatever it was. I think it was start of 2 or end of 1. They had this thing called the Guild Wars Atlas, which basically said, okay, this event happened at this time based on the lore, and it went through it that way. Except they didn't really support it. They wanted to bring it out further, except I think they realized how much work it'd be to update, and it just wasn't quite worth it. But other factors, like on the other hand, you got stuff like specializations, which now appear to be the way that they're going to be handling classes basically going forward.
Right.
Because in Guild Wars 1, you were able to do like a warrior monk or a thief an assassin mesmer or something
Thief
like that.
Mesmer.
Yes, Thief Assassin.
So there's all that sort of. That's how they're going to be handling that going forward, and they've laid the groundwork, which is kind of what they.
Yeah. I have to say, another thing I appreciate is like major skill changes and major like changes to the way you level up and how you create your build your character was rolled out to the entire Guild Wars audience. It wasn't like Destiny where it was like, adapt or die. Like, if you don't buy our expansion, you can go fuck off. Like, we're not gonna support vanilla Guild Wars. They did it fantastic, and I think that's a key point when you release expansions. You cannot abandon the people who decide not to upgrade, or you have to basically sell it to them, right? Make it worth it and give them enough content. So
They did the opposite, man. They made it free to play.
fair
Yeah.
enough. That's a very good point. Yeah. So I think Guild Wars is doing it absolutely right. I think they nailed the expansion down. I think people will be happy and people will be convinced to buy that game. And think about how much content you get with the free to play game, right? It's a stellar base game, and it's only getting better.
Interesting, dude. You say
So yeah,
you say that
so you're saying
people
you like
are-
the expansion, eh?
I have my own reasons, right? As the moderator, I'm
are
meant
they?
to be the voice of the people. Okay.
Oh,
It's
well,
because we have this podcast. Well, it looks like we have to cancel the podcast. Then.
yeah.
No,
Why don't you
I will
share
say
what your reasons are.
I will say that I am like literally every day you guys are playing that game. I struggle to think about why I'm being such a shit, and I should just play the game. But I don't know. The things that frustrate me about it, which I've been vocal to you guys about, is I respect the company a lot. I really like what ArenaNet does with its fans and with the way it's built its world now. The shady business, when they went back on their promise of like the character slots, and then even in terms of like the impressions I've heard of the game, not from you guys, but just from like audience in general, and the fact that I don't really play the game as much as I would like to today is kind of deterring me from buying it. Like I'm not as into Guild Wars as you guys are now. I got other games on my plate, or I don't have time for a MMO. I come on because I enjoy it with you guys, and that's probably why I will buy it, because I enjoy playing games with my friends. But like if all by myself, like I'm not gonna play it, Monday to Wednesday or on the weekend kind of thing. That's my reasoning. Okay.
Well, on the topic of saying, about the timing thing, I think in a previous podcast we talked about how we kind of said that the gaming audience has grown up with these companies, and maybe that's a catalyst for changing to this model of DLC, because we don't have as much time for an expansion anymore.
That's a great point. Yeah, you think that? Yeah, because like expansion, like we talked about before, video games are such a young industry, right? So you talk about growing up with your fans, it totally makes sense, right? Like these are people who have probably been carried on generations to generations and influenced their friends and family to buy more and more games, and DLC just makes sense in terms of supporting your fan base. I read some interesting stories about, like, because this is one I wanted to talk about, is on disc DLC and day one DLC, or like DLC within the first few months, right?
Yeah, which we already dissed about in the state of the industry, right?
Absolutely. I think
Looking at you, Mortal Kombat.
the one thing I agree with, like I'm not like I'm trying to support what the guy's doing it, but like the game does like go into production like a month or two or a month and a half before the game's actual release date, and it's highly unexpected for them to ask their entire company to just like sit around and twiddle their thumbs, right? So they probably get to work on DLC, they get to work on supporting it, and day one patches and stuff, and so I understand why there's DLC quite soon, but like I think it just frustrates me when you see like DLC being planned a year down the line and they have no clue what they're doing, and they're just making generic stuff like costumes.
It's gonna be there. Yeah. It'll be there.
Don't worry about it. We'll figure something out. It's like, dude.
The season's pass, any sort of season pass.
Yeah, I don't think
it's not always a season pass. Sometimes they have a plan, but
Yeah.
the season's pass is an indicator that might be a possibility.
Yeah. It's DLC done wrong, right? In my opinion, I think it's DLC.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
Like map packs even are okay, but like you talked about, they segregate the community. So what's your opinion on DLC done right? How can today in this industry companies do it right?
Relatively cheap, good value. I think good value is always important, but obviously if you can do DLC for good value where it's a decent amount of content for a decent price.
Yeah. But like,
and a lot of Valve is a company that we love, but they wanted to do episodic content, and they completely failed at it.
Absolutely. They're humble
Because they
about
were
it.
going to do episodic content on Half-Life 2. They released one, then they released another, and then they way later released a third, and that is like the biggest cliffhanger in my life, in all seriousness.
I will say that like story DLC, in my opinion, because you're talking about value and stuff like that, I think it's tough for companies to do story DLC to bring in characters and like do new motion capture and all that kind of stuff, which is why they resort to multiplayer or something like that. So I think it's tough to pull off in a single player game, but in that case, have a good single player game that can kind of support content. I'll give you an example of a bad one. Like Batman Arkham Knight came out this year, and this big like commercial point was the Batmobile is now rideable in Arkham Knight, right? So they shoehorn this Batmobile in, which is cool, don't get me wrong. It looks cool and whatever, and people like it, but they force it into the game. It's like they're forcing you to like it. and then they release DLC, and they're like, oh, like highly anticipated Batmobile courses, where like people can go around and like ride really difficult courses like a racing game, and like literally the entire audience was like, nobody asked for this. Like, you're so out of touch with your community. Like that's and I understand why they did it, right? Because it's the only thing they could think of. Like, they're not gonna make new levels because it costs way more, but they should.
But that's easy to make, right?
Other stuff in the season pass. It's new skins for Batmobile.
Absolutely, that was a horrible example of a season pass, right? Like they just did a terrible
You
job.
get all the skins. Wow, that's fucking
and like
brutal.
they were pulling out. Man, they were reaching, Glenn. They were like, oh, this is a 1960s Adam West one. This is a Christopher Nolan one. This is
Oh
a
yeah,
George
that
Clooney
FPS one. Does it come with the POWs and the BAMs on the screen?
I bet it does. I bet that's what you're paying for. Like that's what I mean.
Fucking brutal.
But so then, okay, let's switch it over to multiplayer then. What do you consider as value in a multiplayer DLC?
I don't know. I can't think of anything good off the top of my head.
Yeah, because that's a tough one, right? Because if you say maps, it segregates the community. So I kind of like the trend that games are today. Because like Halo, for example, Halo 5 just came out.
Here's how you do DLC, right? Free.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always.
Halo said, and that's what I got to commend 343 for this. They said all future maps for Halo will be free. Titanfall did this too, right? They basically said, fuck season pass, everyone can have the maps for free, and then until they figure out what the hell to do, which is great. Halo's doing it right, but the only thing they're doing wrong is that to supplement the fact that there's no DLC, they shoehorn microtransactions in instead. So it's like you did a solid, and now you're fucking us over in another way, which is stupid, right? So
Thanks for the solid.
Yeah, so you're it's still pissing off. They almost got it, So I don't know. You're right, Glenn. I can't think of something good other than don't segregate the community and give your maps for free because they're the bare bones of what we asked for.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's give a good example. Battlefield 4 has done a fantastic job with DLC.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to say, people bitch, right? And they say, "Yep, the premium mode's a total pain in the ass." You talk about paying $60 for the game, then $50 for the premium edition, so it's $110 for the game. That sucks. I agree. I don't want to buy a DICE game.
And I refuse to buy it at that price. I
Yes,
waited until it went
exactly.
on sale.
We all.
I
It's
did.
fucking bullshit.
I didn't either.
And then
No
we all
way.
agree, right? Like actually,
I'm sure
in
sales on
sense-
that game spike every time they put it on sale. That's why it's on sale every fucking 3 months.
Absolutely, and like that's
It's
why
the
I
only
think,
time they ever sell copies.
I feel with the DICE game, like Battlefront included, like okay, yes, it's fun to be there when the community starts up and stuff, and sure, it sucks starting like with Battlefield, and that's an issue we've already talked about with the whole like unlock system. It sucks joining in a year late, but damn, we all bought the game for like $10 to $15, whereas these guys bought it for like $110, right? So sure, I'm mad that she can ride her jets better than I, but I also saved $100, so I'm not that mad, and I'm still having a blast. So.
Right.
So, in a sense, Battlefield, they do it bad, but they also do it well today, right? DICE LA is now releasing free maps, and they said every map we release from now on is going to be free. And they all come with amazing multiplayer updates that fully change the way the game works, with tiny tweaks to, like, damage and skills and, weapons and whatever. And I think that's great. That's good. You got to work with your community when it comes to multiplayer games, right? Don't segregate us.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Is free maps a trend that's re-emerging then? It seems like there's many examples of it coming up.
I hope so. It's
great.
Halo 5 is the first big AAA one where I see them just being like, yeah, because Evolve was a game that came out this year and has already faded into obscurity because no one gives a shit about that game because they obliterated their DLC model. So you haven't heard of them, but you know the company. The company's called Turtle Rock Studios, and they created a game called Left 4 Dead, like one of the best co-op games ever. And then they're like, okay, well, we want to make more money, so we're going to make a $60 game and charge you out the ass for DLC and a season pass. And they charge you for stupid things like characters and new monsters and new maps, like everything they could. It's like, don't nickel and dime us, man. You're trying to sell this as an esports platform or like something that is really competitive, and instead it's just like, nope.
Oh, esports will never take off on something like that.
Exactly. Like that was a failed experiment, and I think they know that too.
Good. Make an example of them then.
Yeah. Okay. I wanna. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, David.
So then, what would be a good example of microtransactions done well?
A free game,
talked about
first
that
of
a
all.
little bit in
Yeah.
previous ones, like cosmetic differences.
So just
Not
be
pay to win.
cosmetics.
Not necessarily, but that's a great example of done well. Like it's not a fully limiting statement, but that is an example where it's not going to fuck up your community and fuck up your game, and your game's not going to become pay to win.
Yeah. You don't want pay to win. You want cosmetic, and like cosmetic is a big factor when it comes to aesthetic of your game, right? Like, I guess we're going on a bit of a tangent here, but like I think that's what gamers are realizing, that like you can't pull off cosmetic with hardcore modern first-person shooter like a Battlefield game. But you can do it well in games like Overwatch, TF2, and I guess you know what, Counter-Strike was a pretty serious game, and now it's pretty modded out in terms of microtransactions. So I guess you can, if you think of your aesthetic, you can do it really well. They got the cool looking guns and that kind of thing, and people go ape shit about that, right?
Yep, it's a good market
When,
around.
when a fucking knife goes on sale for $200 on Steam, you've done a good job with your microtransactions. Okay.
I'll give my left fucking nut for a karambit.
Okay, well.
So then,
go
okay,
ahead.
just adding to that one little spot. So then, what about a game like League of Legends or Heroes of Neverth or whatever the hell it's called?
Fucking nailed it.
Like, what about those games for? Because you're buying character slots for these microtransactions.
Are there character
So then-
slots for sale?
Not slots.
No,
characters.
not like character slots,
Heroes.
like characters that you can
Heroes.
play.
Yeah, and I think
Uh-huh.
that's wrong. Dota and LoL do it well because they give you all.
But they also let you play all the characters over time. If you just be like, if you're a dedicated player,
Yeah.
you'll get to play them all because they randomize the free ones, right?
And Dota's
Yes.
completely free.
It's not like these 4 shitty champions are
Yeah.
the free ones. It's like, oh, fuck, Warwick's on this week. Like, I want to play more.
Mhm,
And then eventually I buy Warwick because
Exactly.
he's fucking sick.
Yeah, so microtransactions are tough because you cannot. I don't think you should shoehorn them into a $60 game because I'm already paying you $60 to play the fucking game.
Yeah, and LoL's free, so it's like it's literally free for me to play Warwick
Yeah,
until
so
I
you don't-
fall
you
in
don't
love
mind-
with Warwick. Then I play $4 or whatever it is.
Exactly. You don't mind giving them money, and and don't tell me that it's cosmetic and it won't affect the way the game is, because you're developing the game and you're changing the fundamentals of how you gain in-game points or whatever to incentivize people to buy money, because we're going to be so frustrated about the fact that it takes like 10 hours to unlock one character that we'll just be like, fuck it, here's $3, So that's stupid. That's what I don't like. Make it fair and make it reasonable. Guild Wars, I think, has done a fantastic job with the gems and gold conversion and that kind of thing, right? Like, people can work their ass off, get gems. Or have they changed that, by the way?
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
Can buy gold?
Gold to
Nope.
gem.
Yeah, we were talking about gem conversion ratio earlier
Okay.
when you weren't on.
Yeah.
Gems are cheaper than they've been in a long time right now.
Yeah. So there you go. That's a great idea. Like, people, if you're dedicated and you play a lot, reward your player base and give them the option of not having to put a credit card to your account. Okay. One last thing I want to ask before I ask you guys for final thoughts is expansions. What do you guys think on a good expansion done today? Is is Heart of Thorns your go-to example?
I think Heart of Thorns is great. I've really enjoyed it for the last several weeks.
What about the model of Heart of Thorns? Like, are you okay with that model today? Or,
Yeah,
Or
so.
like, or DLC is more your favor? Like, what do you think?
There's lots of examples of good DLC, but I mean, for specifically asking about Heart of Thorns, I think they've nailed it.
Yeah.
Because the Guild Wars has been doing good on microtransactions the entire time. They've always made it cosmetic, which I really like, and Heart of Thorns has a lot of content in it. It's been great.
Yeah, and we touched on DLC. What kind of stuff you need in DLC? With an expansion, do you need like substantial content in your expansion to be willing to put down $40, $50, $60 for it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because like
As long as they are able to lay the groundwork and the foundation for
Yes.
future stuff, I think
That's a huge point. Eamon.
Yeah. So yes, with Heart of Thorns, they didn't have as much content as I'd like, but if you look at what they've done with the game, you can see they're sort of laying the groundwork, and there's a lot of stuff they can be doing in the future.
you that's a fantastic point. Really, really good point.
It's very enticing.
Most games that do expansions in this day and age follow that philosophy, right? Diablo 3 was a travesty at release, and Reaper Souls came and like almost saved that game from extinction. Destiny: The Taken King, another example. Like, people were frustrated, and now the game is finally what it is that it should have been 2 years ago. But hey, like better late than never, right? So people are happy with the state of the game. So you're absolutely right. They lay the groundwork for what is hopefully going to be much higher quality content in the future, and then hopefully we'll see, more. Like not again, we don't want to see nickel and diming, and we want to see more content for a reasonable price.
Yeah, and I think what Heyman mentioned is also important because like there's still some stuff that hasn't come out yet, like raids or legendary armor or whatever, that we're waiting on. But we trust that it's going to be done right.
Yeah.
Given that groundwork that Heyman's talking about.
Fair enough. Great.
So on Friday, the Binding of Isaac came out with the Afterbirth DLC. So that is what I've been playing my time with. And it's basically adding an extra 100 hours of content to it. But it's classifying itself as a DLC while it adds over 100 new items, which basically changes a whole bunch of stuff, adds new bosses and endings. Like, it's classified as DLC, but I think it has as much content to the original game as an expansion would in, like, Heart of Thorns.
It's interesting how DLC can be done even for a small game like that and add so much content, right? Like, it seems to be a matter of knowing your audience and what they want,
I mean, I think the download was like 50 megs or something.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were talking about, which is knowing your audience and knowing what they want. Like, if that's what they want, and you charge them a fair amount, because the game costs like what, $2 on sale. So like, how much was the DLC? 50 cents.
Yeah, Rebirth on sale is like $5 maybe, and the expansion with the pre-order I got it for about $7, and right now its regular price is about $11 US.
Yeah, that's scaled.
It's high value.
That's absolutely. Going back to
that's like
Glenn's,
$100 Canadian then, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like going back to Glenn's conversion rate, which is fair, is that it's cents per hour when it comes to that game, right? So not a bad job. Cool. Well, any last thoughts before I close off, guys? I think we have made some good points for sure.
I'm good.
All right.
I'm solid.
All right, sweet. I think that's.
I feel like a good saying would be, poor expansion is just DLC, in my opinion.
Nice.
It's the way that I've always thought about it.
I like it.
Nice.
If you want Heyman to expand on that, then please send $3.99 to. No, that's a really good point.
For my opinion, please send $5 to.
What are you drinking?
Are you about to drop your bank account number? I've got a pen ready.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to thank you guys again for episode 7, and we'll see you next time.